My goodness, you guys, it feels like there should have been a warning at the beginning of this. No animals or children were harmed in the making of this film. I am speaking of the Shudder movie, well, upcoming Shudder movie, or now it's on Shudder. I don't know. I'm talking about the film The Devil's Bath, which I went into it completely blind, and I would say probably I honestly am not sure if that's the best way to go into this because, well, initially I had some cons to the film as I'm watching it, and I'm confused about some of the stuff that's happening and some of the things that the character does that don't make sense to me, reactions that she has that don't make sense to me. And then by the end of the film, it makes more sense. And also, I went looking up some information about the true events and true characters that this film was based on. And it is based on true characters or a true practice back in 1700s-ish Germany / Austria. I'm not going to get into depth as far as what it's about, in case you want to go into it as blind as possible. If you are interested to know more about what's really going on in this film, I will include a link to an article that I found that talks about it a little bit more in depth. Basically, the premise is, without telling you what it's really about, there's this simple girl in this village in like Austria. They do indicate at the beginning that it's true. And her name is Agnes. And I cannot remember the actor's name who plays her. She's actually a singer, I think. And she came in as sort of a last minute replacement for the original person who was supposed to play this character. I felt like she did a really good job. She's a very good actor, very sympathetic character. She portrayed that character quite well. Anyway, Agnes, she is getting ready to marry this guy. And it's a very simple little village type place where these people are. And they have this marriage ceremony. And it's a very hard life. This is, 1700s Europe. And they have to work their asses off just to live every day. So you really get the sense for how hard life was back in the day. And boy, how good we've got it today, you guys. Most of the world has got it really great. Easy peasy compared to life back then. Anyway, she gets married to, I think his name was Wolf. And she goes off to be with him in his house. And you see that in the early days of her marriage, things aren't going smoothly. She's having some issues with him that are confusing and distressing to her, make her quite upset. And she doesn't seem to get along the best with her mother-in-law. I'll go ahead and let you know that while this film is on Shudder, it is not your typical horror movie. I went into it not knowing that, so I'm expecting something. I mean, the events of this film are truly horrific, and the situation that these people were in and what they felt driven to do in their situation, that has all the markings of some type of horror movie. But what I mean is it's not your typical horror movie that you think of when you think of a horror movie. So I'll let you know that right away in case you go in expecting one thing and you might feel disappointed with it being something else. I didn't feel fundamentally disappointed in this film, just a little confused until I found out the story behind it. And it helped me to appreciate it a bit more than I think I felt like I did when the story was first done. It's very well made. It's very well acted. And my comment at the very beginning will probably become clear to you. There are a couple of times where there's like shows an animal being slaughtered, because they live in the woods and like farming type areas and they slaughter their animals to eat them or whatever. It was so realistic. I'm just sitting here wondering, did they really slaughter this animal? Because it was done very well. It makes me highly suspicious. because of how well it was done. And then there's a scene where there's a child who gets physically harmed very badly. And the way that child acted, now I know that was fake, but wow, he did a really good job in that scene. And it seemed so real. I was very impressed with just the movie making aspect of it in general and how realistic the characters, well, they were based on real people, but how realistic it was, how convincing it was in its portrayal of certain things. And like I said, the things about it that I felt like were cons initially ended up not being cons once I found out more, but there definitely is kind of a con worth mentioning, and it might come across as a little bit nitpicky. This film clocks in at about 2 hours long. It's quite long, and it feels like it's quite long, and it feels like it is overstaying its welcome. Some shots linger way too long. There are shots that don't really make any sense to me, like shots that linger on a ceiling or other inanimate objects. This made the film go on longer than it really needed to be. It didn't really, for me, those sorts of long, drawn out shots of just nothing, or shots of her just walking through the woods, that it just lingered a bit too long on those sorts of things. It didn't really do anything to help underscore or help cement or help me appreciate the film more. It just kind of made me feel a little bit impatient, like I was ready for it to just move on. Let's get to the point of what this film is supposed to be about. And the film is about the Devil's Bath and what that meant for back in the day, and why there were mostly two certain types of people who got caught up in the fallout of what the Devil's Bath was all about. I'll probably just end that explanation there and not get more in depth about it, so that you can experience it for yourself if you want to just go in not understanding everything. I think it's worth a watch, for starters, for historical reasons. I think it's something that's important and sobering to know about. This is not a feel-good movie, but if you like these types of stories, if you like stories about events that took place a long, long time ago when life was much harder and people acted much differently, behaved much differently than they do now about certain things that go on, you might find this interesting. I do recommend it just for the acting of the main character. She's a very subdued character, but she plays it well. And there's a scene with her at the very end where she's having a conversation with someone. Trying not to give too many specifics, but she did a really good job in that scene. I thought that her acting in there was great. I have no complaints at all about the film as far as that goes. So those are my vague thoughts and commentary on The Devil's Bath. And if you decide you want to see it, maybe you've heard of this before. Maybe you've heard of the events that this story portrays before. I had not. So it was quite interesting and impactful, sobering. So I'm going to let this be it for now, and I'll see you in the next video. Adios.